went on, bloodstains were all over the trees, and he eventually reached an area where Viridian Forest should have been, but instead the sign read, "I warned you," and in front of it was a black Pikachu. It said, "Death, is that you? That is you. Die." It then attacked it, killing the player. Blood pooled out everywhere before the screen faded to game over. In at 8, Snow on Mount Silver. This creepypasta tells the tale of two brothers who had an unfortunate encounter with a hacked Pokemon game. The author of this story, the older brother, remembers walking into his sibling's room to see him lying on the floor in tears. His Game Boy Advance and hacked version of Pokemon Blue smashed at his feet. His brother would tell him in a distorted panic that all he saw was white everywhere, and then everything went black. His brother was committed to the psych ward at their local hospital. When he came down from all the drugs in his system, he asked his brother to throw out all of the hacked cartridges. At home, curious, he picked up their hacked copy of Pokemon Silver and popped it into his Game Boy to give it a look. The two had a long history of hacking games using their Game Shark, and up until then it had only provided hours and hours of joy. He found a notebook with a bunch of Game Shark codes in his brother's room, with only one left visible that hadn't been viciously scratched out. Next to it was the writing, "Easter egg, Snow on Mount Silver." The game was odd when he started it up. It said that his brother had almost completed his entire Pokedex, and the sprites of the Pokemon in his roster seemed washed out, sullen almost. The game brought him to Mount Silver, but every time he tried to go elsewhere, the player character would repeat, "I can't run, I can't go."
Bing boing, bing boing, bing boing.
Bye.
Go back down. I can never go back. So he continued to climb the mountain. He got a little further and the player's sprite stopped with the words, "I'm cold," popping up on the screen. He climbed further. As he continued to climb one by one, all of the Pokemon in his roster died. By the time he reached the top, the snow in the game had stopped falling, and to his surprise, a Celebi sat there on the summit. The battle began. Each time he tried to use a Pokemon, they would appear zombified and die immediately. That's when all of the Pokemon flashed upon his screen, looking grotesque, smiling sinisterly. That's when the most absurd thing happened. Across the screen, the words, "Use Destiny Bond," flashed. As horrible screech echo out of the Game Boy, the player felt ill. All he saw was white, then black. Coming to his senses, he threw out the game and never played a hack game ever again. In at 7, Pikachu's Rage. This creepypasta is about a player that had Pokemon Yellow and was a big fan of Pikachu. As a child, he didn't really care for him as much and abandoned him in his box because he didn't want to evolve. Years passed and he eventually forgot about the game, but feeling nostalgic, he ended up finding his old copy of Pokemon Yellow. He put it in his Game Boy Advance and turned it on. Everything was normal until Pikachu appeared, who instead of happy-go-lucky seemed confused before turning into a scowl. The player was weirded out by this, but hit start anyway and decided to continue the game he had abandoned years ago. He opened up the box he had left Pikachu in, but he wasn't there. He came to the conclusion that it must have been a glitch and continued playing the game without him. He was in the middle of battling the first of the Elite Four when he heard a low groan coming from the game. It sounded like Pikachu. He thought it weird but continued his battle and eventually won. A text box then appeared. "You left him behind to die. He never did anything wrong, yet you still treated him like he was nothing. How does it feel to know that he died because of you?" The player was still freaked out but continued, eventually reaching the room where the last of the Elite Four were. He won, but as before a text box appeared reading, "Well, now he's going to show you. Show us all what it feels like to be rejected by those you care about." The screen then faded and the champion room opened. He entered, meeting up with his rival Blue, but the dialogue was not what he expected. He said, "So even through all of this, all that you've seen and been told, you're still pushing forward. You don't even know what you did, do you?" A choice box appeared with yes and no. The player clicked yes. Blue then yelled, "Liar." Then a thunderbolt sound was heard. Blue continued, "Do you hear that? Did you hear another get roasted alive by his anger? Well, now that's left is to get to me. Once I make you black out, I'll be able to save myself from the same fate as them." The battle then began. The player defeated Blue, and Blue said one final thing before disappearing. "No, I'm next. I'm not ready to die." The screen then faded to black, and a figure appeared. A level 255 ghost. It was Pikachu. It slayed the player's entire team. A text box then appeared, and now that I've taken away the two things that denied me my happiness, I'm going to show you what it's like to be alone. The player's character then got sucked into the black void. It was all alone. Pikachu appeared again. Do you like it? This is what you left me with when you left me behind to die. An empty darkness that I'll never be able to escape from, and neither will you. I'm going to make you suffer. Suffer for what you did to me, for what I was denied. And when you're in agony, just remember, this was all your fault. The game then crashed. In at 6, my first Pikachu. This creepypasta comes to us from Kirby64. They describe how they had purchased a cartridge labeled Pika Yellow version from a game shop. The game was pretty much like any other Pokemon game. It started up normally. They played it for a few weeks and it had some cool mechanics, like the options to play, praise, or scold your Pikachu, almost like a Tamagotchi. The Pikachu would react to its treatment, being upset if it was scolded, even turning on the player midway through the Pokemon Tower, causing him to black out and wind up back at the Pokemon Center. He left the game for a long time, eventually down the line returning to it. He started it up, but it severely glitched out, forcing him to restart it 6 or 7 times. He knew something.
Liz? I think the car is flooding.
Oh no, Carter, no!
Water level's coming up.
Oh, drink water! Oh, my makeup, my makeup!
Oh no, it's going!
Weird and yeah.
Something was wrong immediately though. The game loaded up, but this time he was in Lavender Town, and his Pikachu was nowhere to be found. He wasn't even in the player's party. Every time he spoke to an NPC, they would say it looks like Pikachu wants something, or have you played with Pikachu lately? Figuring it was some sort of event in the game, the player went to the Lavender Volunteer Pokemon House where lost Pokemon were taken care of. This is where he found Pikachu, who ran up to him expectantly. 3 options were given to the player: praise, scold, or gift. He selected praise. Pikachu's stats had changed again. It was marked as lonely now. Assuming this was just another mechanic in the game to make the player feel more involved, they thought nothing of it. Every time they got into a battle, Pikachu would act strangely, flinching and becoming confused out of nowhere. That's when things got weird. Pikachu started to learn moves on its own, disobeying the orders the player was trying to implement in the game. Pikachu learned a move called Shadow Rush on its own. During the next battle, the player gave Shadow Rush a try, which turned out to be super effective on every Pokemon. As the player progressed in the game, Pikachu became more outlandish. It started to use moves that would harm other Pokemon in the player's roster. When the player looked online to try to find answers as to why Pikachu was doing this, he found nothing. He shared his story on a few blogs and everyone thought he was making it up. Finally, the player decided to take things further and managed to find the contact info of someone who worked at Game Freak, sending them a detailed message describing Pikachu's erratic behavior. To their surprise, the player got a message back that read, "I got your message. Let's talk." The Game Freak employee asked him a lot of questions, ones that sounded really ominous. Eventually, the employee stopped messaging the player back, the deeper the player got into telling them his story. 2 weeks went by and the player got a strange message from the central director of Game Freak, asking if they could set up a meeting with them. When they went into their offices to speak to them, the police were present. One of the officers told the player that a report had been filed, claiming that they were in possession of stolen property, and if they returned the game, there would be no charges. Confused, they handed over the game, and the police told them not to say anything since the game was part of an ongoing investigation. They tried reaching out to the Game Freak employee again, but discovered they had been blocked by them. Years later, they would see a similar looking cartridge to the one they had played show up on eBay. Someone out there won that auction, and the player knew they would have a very interesting game on their hands. In at 5, Lonely Pikachu. Now this one is just sad. Our list is already long enough, so I'm going to try and sum this up very briefly.
Okay, that was scary, but I'm just gonna stop it here. I'll make another video later. So that was it. That was all for this video. Peace.